Warnings. Today I'm going to do my August wrap up. So I feel like most of you already know that August was not the best reading month for me because I really got into BTS this month, and I think that for most people who get into BTS, the month that they do is not the best reading month. I feel like it eventually happens at some point. Like, it is just inevitable that at some point you fall down the rabbit hole so hard you just no longer know how to read. That's not even true. And like, I feel like even me saying like I'm in a BTS induced reading slump is kind of doing a disservice, because I just don't want to pick up any books. Like, for me, a reading slump is when I'm trying to read and I just can't, and I can't get myself to concentrate, and I can't find what I want to read. In this case, it is really just me being like, yeah, I just don't want to read. I just want to like listen to BTS and watch BTS music videos and watch BTS live performances and watch Run BTS and Bon Voyage and all those kinds of things. And I just don't really find myself wanting to pick up any book. And I did like definitely try in the beginning, but I would definitely get distracted because like all I can listen to is BTS, and like then some kind of song would come on that I really like and I just couldn't sit still. And so it's just a whole thing, and I hope that it will get better in September. But yeah, I did read 6 things in August, so it's not as bad. It happened like, I don't know, halfway through the month. So I already had some books done, and I'm also in the middle of like 5 books. And I feel like I will probably have to restart at least 2 of them in order to actually read them. But I hope that I will also finish those in September, obviously. But yeah, I'm just going to talk about the 6 books that I read in August. I obviously had my Melanie themed TBR, which obviously didn't go as well as I wanted it to. I wanted to read way more than I actually did, but that was also the reason why I ended up like falling so hard. Like, I just didn't feel bad about not reading the books, because the thing that I got into was also because of Melanie and also like induced by Melanie. And so it's just like, I was just like, why would I feel bad about not reading this TBR when I'm getting into something else that Melanie really loves? So that obviously didn't really help my reading, but yeah, let's just get into it. The first thing I read was Giddy and the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. I buddy read this with Madeline, and obviously, you know, this is not only a book that Melanie really loves, that is her favorite book of the year so far, but also that she gifted me, that she got me at BEA and BookCon. And I've just been so very excited to read this anyway, but just having this physical arc meant so very much to me. And I didn't have an easy time with this book. This book definitely was a struggle for a whole lot of the beginning. Like, the beginning was just only confusing, if I'm honest. And then eventually I got to a point where I was still confused, but I ended up just enjoying it so much. So I feel like this is just one of those books where you do have to push through a little bit. And I do think that you might struggle with it. And I know that a lot of people have struggled with it. But it's one of those books where it's worth it. And I have pushed through or not pushed through other books, like easy to read books, where I was like, this was not worth it. This is 200% worth it. It has amazing twists and turns and so many things that I just did not see coming at all, that I just wasn't expecting in the slightest. It has an absolutely amazing ending. It has an absolutely amazing main female-female relationship that is probably one of my favorites of the year, because it is just so well done. Like, it's hard to talk about it. You just kind of really have to experience it. Like, this whole book is just kind of something you just have to experience. But I feel like the relationship in particular is, you just have to read it because it is that fucking incredible. And it just made me so happy and made my heart feel so full, but it also made my heart shatter into 5,000 pieces. and it is just all so beautifully done. It is such an epic, interesting world building. And again, it was a really challenging read. It was genuinely really challenging. And I think this was the first time in a really, really long time that I felt like there was a little bit of a language barrier as well. But I finished this and I could not give it 5 stars because I was just so in love with the characters and with the ending, and the fact that I managed to push through this book in 4 days, even though I was really I read this and I really had to take my time. I really was way below my average reading speed with this book just because of the way it was written and me kind of having to concentrate more. But I do not regret a single second or a single page of reading this, not at all. And I just feel like this book deserves all the more of my love just because I've never in my life had a book where I was struggling so much during reading it that I still wanted to finish this much. Usually this, I'm so easy to give up on shit, but this one I knew it would build up to something amazing, and it fucking did, and I fucking loved it, and I cannot wait to reread this book again and again and again, and to just get a little bit more out of it every time and just fall more in love with it every time. This is definitely not gonna be the book for everyone, and I understand that, but I hope that people really give this a chance because pushing through it is worth it. It really is. And I'm not the kind of person who usually does that. I am really not. But this is just, it is an absolute masterpiece. Look at this. You see those purple tabs? That is all favorite moments. And I usually, in a book about this size, have 3, maybe 4. There's just tons of them because it's so good. When I was looking up quotes in this book for my Instagram post, I fucking started crying, which is what I did last year with Ink Mistress, which ended up being my favorite book of the year. So I don't know. I want to reread it before the year's over, but I fucking loved it. I definitely think you have to really, Madeline read it and enjoyed it. So I don't even necessarily think you have to be someone who really loves sci-fi and fantasy in order to love this. But I guess you just kind of have to be a little bit used to it. So it's just so good. Again, I give it 5 out of 5 stars. I just loved it so much. Next, I read Blanca Aloha by Anna Marie McLemore. This is my very first Anna Marie McLemore book. I read a short story or 2 by her, but this is the first full book that I read by her, and it was absolutely beautiful, so atmospheric, really, really, really beautiful writing, and still so easy. I think this is exactly the book that I needed. It was still just really whimsical and beautiful and intense, but I was really fast with reading this one and I was just able to get through it really quickly, but still it just had so many beautiful descriptions and stuff like that. I think the thing that I liked the most about this, apart from just the beautiful writing, is that it showed so many different kinds of love, and just it portrayed them all in a way that made them all seem equal. So it did not put romantic love over platonic love over a sisterly love or general family relationships. And I just like when books can do that, when they can first of all equally focus on these kinds of relationships, so that time-wise in the book the romantic relationship just doesn't get the most amount of pages and the most time, but also when a book can just portray all these different kinds of relationships as something that is equal, and that a romantic relationship is not necessarily something better or bigger or more intense than a platonic relationship. And that is something that I absolutely love when books can really pull this off, and this absolutely pulled this off, and I just appreciate it so much for doing this. I definitely really, really enjoyed this, but I also 100% understand why this hit differently for Melanie. I think if I hadn't read this because of her, I probably would have recommended it to her, because it is just this book just yells Melanie. it just very, very much fits what she likes and what she enjoys. The review that she wrote for this book is one of my favorite reviews of all time of hers, but overall in general as well. I think it is such a beautifully written and personal review. It also just fits the book with how beautiful it is. I'm gonna leave a link to that in the description. But yeah, I'm just really, really glad that I read this and I finally read something by Anna Marie McLemore, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Then I did my reread of City of Glass by Cassandra Clare. This is the 3rd book in the Mortal Instruments, and I have actually done a full video about my experience of rereading the first 3 books in the Mortal Instruments. So if you are interested in that, I'm going to leave a link to that in the info card and in the description. But this was just a really, really wonderful experience. I just fucking love the Mortal Instruments. I fucking love Jason Clary. I feel like I say this every time. I say this every time I talk about these books. I'm just still so surprised by how much I still love these characters and by how much I still love this story, even though it is kind of like older at this point, and there are definitely a couple of things in there that I no longer love in my YA today, but I still just find it so incredibly enjoyable. And this one had me really shook with all the things that get revealed in it that I wasn't even aware that they get revealed in this book already. I just think, like, it just made me think that when I read this book originally 6 years ago, like, the name Herondale didn't mean anything to me, and that just blows my mind, because obviously now the Infernal Devices has a huge impact on the rest of the Shadowhunter world, and these stories that took place in the past are so important for the stories of today. And it's just, I just love that so much. That is one of my favorite aspects of the whole Shadowhunter universe, and makes me even more pumped just for the final 2 series in this world, and just what's going to happen with the last hours and how that is going to influence the world and how that is going to influence the wicked powers. And it's just all so good, and it just made me so happy. And yeah, I just love Jace, and I love Clary and Jace, and I love Clary, and I'm just trash like that, and I do not care. Now that I've reread this, I can so confidently talk about the fact that Jace and Clary are definitely 100% one of my favorite OTPs, because like the fact that I still like them in those first 3 books where their relationship is just really on a trashy level, it just says more than enough about how much I love them. And just knowing how everything develops for them and knowing where they are at now just even like confirms it and makes them even higher up on my list. But I'm so glad that I still love the beginnings of their relationship as well. I ended up giving this review 5 out of 5 stars. I was just very happy. And after I had finished City of Glass, that meant that I could finally read The Reticles of Magic by Cassandra Clare and Wesley Chu. This is the most recent, well, I guess the Ghost of the Shadow Market came out after it, so it doesn't count anymore. But one of the most recent published books in the Shadowhunter universe, but it takes place timeline-wise in between City of Glass and during City of Fallen Angels. And so I just thought that is kind of the perfect point for me to read this. So I waited until I finally had reread City of Glass to get to this book. And I definitely think that that was a really good decision. You do not have to reread them beforehand. It's not that important. But as I was in the middle of rereading the series anyway, I think it made so much sense for me to wait until after City of Glass to read this. And it definitely just had a different impact on me because I was just way more involved with these characters. But yeah, I just really, really enjoyed it. It made me feel so very soft. I just really think that the relationship between Magnus and Alec is just portrayed absolutely beautifully. And I really like being able to just know so many of Alec's thoughts, because we know he's struggling a bunch. And like kind of having this book and kind of just like knowing his thoughts and just knowing where he's coming from with some of the things that we then later like see him do. Not that it excuses it, but it just makes him like, it just makes it more understandable. And so that's also really great for me with this current reread, that this is going to influence how I see the next books as well, you know? And yeah, I just really think in general that this definitely has an impact on the rest of the Shadowhunter books, be it character-wise, but also plot-wise. I mean, there's some stuff in here, and I just really enjoyed that. Like, this just really does not feel like it's just like, oh, like we can just, you know, market another book just based on this relationship that a lot of people really like, it actually makes sense that this book exists. And I mean, even if it didn't, honestly, it was just a whole lot of fun. And I love all of the novellas and stuff like that. But Cassandra Clare just always manages to like reveal more things to us, even when we kind of think we know everything. And I just love that so much. And it makes me so very happy. And again, it just made me feel very soft. Also, I just loved Aline and Helen. And just Aline's gay panic was the most relatable thing I've ever read in my entire life, and I absolutely loved it. I gave the Reticles of Magic 4 out of 5 stars. This is where I really began falling deep and hard into the rabbit hole. So this is where I stopped reading any novels, but I did get the graphic novel Bingo Love from my library. It's by T. Franklin. I did know that Melanie read and really liked this as well. I think she gave it 4 stars. So I was like, yeah, like this fits, like this is good enough. So I read it and I absolutely loved this graphic novel. I definitely read it at a time where I think I was not very emotionally ready for it. It definitely like hit me very hard, and it also like, I don't know, just made me think about some things. I was just very much in like an emotionally vulnerable place, and it just made me think a lot, but it also just made me super emotional. And I just think that it is really beautiful, and it is just a story that does not really get told a lot. And I think that it's so important to tell these kinds of stories and to have this story and these characters with all their flaws and all the mistakes that they have made, and the way that they sometimes maybe didn't treat people the right way, or I don't know, just so many layers to it. It was just absolutely wonderful. But yeah, it just really sent me on an emotional journey that I was not prepared for in the slightest. And it does deal with like homophobia, because it is about these 2 older women that fell in love when they were younger, but then they were, you know, separated because of homophobia just back in the day, and them kind of like getting a second chance. And oh my god, I just talking about it like that just makes me want to like full on burst into tears again. And yeah, again, for me, it just really like made me think. It made me think some. And I like when books make me think. I like when books, you know, kind of like give me a new way to look at things and to look at life. And I definitely think that that book did that for me. And I just really like that. But even without all of that, it was just a really beautiful story. But it does obviously also like deal with these, you know, more intense topics, and it is very emotional because of that. But it's also just very emotional because it is just really, really beautiful. And I just really like the family relationship as well. And it was just, I just loved it so much. And I think that this is a super underrated graphic novel. And again, a story that should be told. You know, it's 2 women of color as well. And just this story of just growing up in those times, being gay or bi or queer, whatever. And, you know, just being an older queer person, all these kinds of things. It's just so good. And again, just so many layers and so many levels. And I ended up giving it 5 out of 5 stars because I was just so impacted by it on so many levels. And then finally, in August, I read the Save Me Webtoon because, of course, the one thing that I could read while I was falling down the rabbit hole of BTS is something BTS related. I feel like most people have probably heard about this, but this is a webtoon that is kind of about this, you know, AU, where the 7 members of BTS are not in a boy group. They are just kind of, you know, like normal boys, and they were all friends in school, but then they kind of, you know, ended up like not really being friends anymore. And then one of them kind of relives the same day in a Groundhog Day kind of situation and has to save them all, because they kind of just by not being friends anymore, they just kind of all, you know, went into directions that are just not so great. And it's just kind of about saving them. And it fits very much overall with just the general messages that BTS kind of put out there and the general energy that they kind of put out there. But it is also definitely super, super intense, and it deals with so many things. I'm gonna leave a list of trigger warnings in the description because I couldn't even name them all, but it is like just so many things in there. Definitely be cautious going into it, but for me, I was a little bit scared because of certain triggers that I knew would be in there. But for me, it was actually just like a really healing read. And not to say that that is going to be like that for everyone. Obviously, you still have to decide what you can and can't read. But I just want to put out there that for me, even though I had some triggers and I was also, when I read this, definitely not in the best mental space, for me, it was actually rather healing than anything else. And so I really appreciated that and I really love that. And I'm really glad Melanie told me to read this because I was kind of like, oh, I'm not sure if I want to read this because it's going to make me fall even further into the rabbit hole. And then also I'm not sure how it's going to like make me feel. And she said, you should definitely read it. You will love it. And she was right because of course she was. And I'm just really glad that I read this because it fits into their music videos and stuff like that as well. So I just loved it as an overall story, but it also just really generally kind of enhances your full BTS experience because you just get it more. You get a lot of like the music videos and stuff like that more. So yeah, and just the experience of reading a webtoon on my iPad where like it's not like you just, you know, have like a page, but you like literally scroll through it and it's just like a one like long scroll. It's beautifully done. Like it is beautiful art in general, but just the way it is done and just like, you know, scrolling through it like one thing, the color changes and the things like the panels and how they'd be done. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. I love this so much and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. So yeah, that is everything that I have read in August. Again, I hope that September, I mean honestly, if I read about like 10 things in September, I will be absolutely fine. That will be more than enough for me. I'm not trying to shoot for like a 15 to 20 books month, also because I'm moving and I'm also struggling a little bit with listening to audiobooks at the moment. I don't really know what's going on. This was before the BTS phase, so this is not like, oh, I just want to listen to BTS instead. I just somehow am really struggling with concentrating on audiobooks, so I don't really know what's up with that. So, you know, if I have another 6 books wrap up next month, that will also obviously be totally fine. I would like to shoot for 10, but I am honestly just glad if I pick up anything at some point because currently it is not looking good, my friends. Because again, it's just this feeling that I also just don't want to read. And I'm telling you straight up that if I didn't have arcs, I would not care. I would absolutely not care. I have read 100 books so far this year. I have reached my Goodreads goal. Like, Save Me was literally my 100th book of the year. So I do not feel obligated to read in general. I just feel obligated to read my arcs. And so I do hope to get some reading done in September, but currently not super hopeful, honestly. Yeah, I make new videos every Wednesday and Sunday with occasional reviews on Friday. So click subscribe to never miss anything and hit the little bell so you get notified as well. And thank you so much for watching. I guess I'll see you soon. Bye!